Sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today to learn a little bit about what we're doing in the education space and some of the partnerships that we're starting and looking to expand in that space. I will share my screen here and share a little presentation to kind of guide this discussion. And feel free to jump in if anybody pops in here either to ask questions as we go, and happy to have this be a question and answer session if people pop in. All right, so introduction. These are the three of us who are going to kind of be leading the discussion here today. I'm Travis Hoyam, one of the co-founders of REM5, and I lead our education products group. Meg Nopes, if you want to say hi there, she is part of the education team and one of our managers, and Guer, who is a concierge and another member of the education team, and both of them work a lot with me with teachers to build lessons, plan field trips, and now on some of the new offerings that we've got going as well. So that'll be the team that is talking, and I'll maybe throw it to you guys if you want to give a little bit of background on your start at REM5 and kind of some of the things that you've done, particularly on the education side, and we'll kind of go into some of those specific buckets a little bit more later. Meg, you want to start for a second?
Yeah, so I've been working at REM5 for the past 2 years, and I work on the education team working with teachers. We do sensory-friendly events at REM5, working with seniors as well, and yeah.
And one of our managers, so if you're doing a holiday event, probably seen Meg.
Yes, yeah, I'm at the lab during our normal entertainment hours, usually always, so I'm often there.
All right, and Guer?
Yeah, so likewise, I've been at REM5 for 2 years, starting out in the entertainment business, but as we started rolling out different educational offerings, field trips, going to schools, working with teachers, started to jump on that, and it's been really an awesome process, learning a lot about how we've been able to integrate VR into different lessons, figuring out different ways of creating experiences for students, working out lesson plans and integrating that information, and it's just been a blast ever since.
All right, and they'll help me kind of fill in this discussion here, but the general outline is to go over immersive technology so that this discussion we can kind of start the groundwork so that we're all talking about the same thing, especially if you're listening to this later. It's good to know exactly what we're talking about when we talk about something like 3 degrees of freedom versus 6 degrees of freedom and different kind of levels of headsets. We'll give a little background on REM5, what we're doing in distance learning, and then happy to answer any questions everybody has as well. So this is something we always like to start with, just talking about VR, or this kind of concept has really been the next big thing in technology for a very long time, but it hasn't really lived up to expectations until more recently. So we can go all the way back to the stereoscope over 100 years ago, when you would take an image and then take a lens. One of those lenses would tilt that image a little bit and give you a little bit of depth in that image, creating a visual effect to make it seem like you were there. ViewMaster is really the same kind of thing, but a little bit more advanced. But this was another thing that was going to really disrupt education, travel, entertainment, all kinds of different things. Maybe didn't quite live up to expectations as far as disrupting all of those technologies or use cases, but still a cool device nonetheless, and something that the kids love to play with at REM5. The current generation of virtual reality really started in 2012 with the Oculus Kickstarter. So that is the old school Oculus device right there, the first one that they made. And really launched that revolution. They were eventually acquired by Facebook, and now still are one of the biggest headset makers in the world, if not the biggest probably at this point. So that's really where we're sitting in the industry and the development of the industry. This latest generation is really only about 4 years old right now. The Oculus devices and HTC devices didn't really launch until 2016. So we're still pretty new in this industry, and that's, you know, really an exciting place to be. So immersive technology has all kinds of different flavors. The industry has done a really good job of confusing everybody by calling everything VR or XR or mixed reality, using kind of the same names interchangeably. So the way that we like to differentiate is really to say virtual reality is when you're in a completely virtual world. So it's a completely digital world around you. You can move around in it. If you have the right headset, interact with that environment. So that's really what virtual reality is. 360 video is another step down from that, but that's going to be an actual image from the real world, whether that is a 360 video that's live action, or it's an image that has been shot and is just still. So oftentimes that is lumped into that virtual reality category, but we like to make that distinction between those two things because they are different. Augmented reality is going to be taking some of those digital images, but then layering them on top of the real world. So you can see here the image is somebody driving in a car and overlaying directions on their windshield. So that's an example of augmented reality. Snapchat filters are an example of augmented reality. And I'll go through some examples here later today. Pokemon Go is another really good example of augmented reality. So a lot of different use cases there, but very different from virtual reality. Mixed reality is what we talk about when you're mixing something that's real in the physical world with the virtual world. So we have a hockey training stick. So you can actually be holding a hockey stick, do training drills just like you would in reality. But what you're seeing is a digitized experience. Same thing, we can do the same kind of things with police training, where you're actually holding you know, a weapon that, you know, doesn't fire real bullets, but in the virtual world you can make it interact like it would in the real world. So those are just some examples of mixed reality. Sort of gives you a flavor of where these different technologies lie on that spectrum. And the same thing kind of goes for the headsets here. This is where, you know, things can kind of get confusing on what's virtual reality. You know, what's 360 video? If I'm buying this headset, what am I getting versus spending maybe 3 times as much for a headset that really looks similar? So if you kind of start on the left there with a device like this, the Google Cardboard, this is really the most common device that's out there. These can be as little as $10. The great thing about them is they're really accessible. You can just stick your phone in this and actually experience some 360 videos or 360 images. It is limited in its capability. So you're only going to be able to move your head left, right, up, down, or tilt. So 3 degrees of freedom in the way that operates. And it's going to be limited on the processing power as well. So it's not going to be quite as high quality as the next headset that we have up there, which is the Oculus Go. So this is a device going to have the same basic technology as a Google Cardboard, but now everything is integrated and it's dedicated to virtual reality or 360 video, and you've also got a controller that goes along with it as well. This is also the first device that was truly mobile, so you could put this in a backpack and bring it somewhere and have some educational experiences. That's what we really use this for. It's also something we use for corporate training. So really great to be able to, you know, we've put 40 of these in a suitcase and brought them to a company to do corporate training. So that's a unique capability that you can't do with some of the higher end devices. Now we're getting to the point where some of the 6 degrees of freedom headsets, which is where you're adding in now the X, Y, and Z planes. So not only does it know where you're at when you're turning your head around, but now I can move around in space. So something like the Oculus Quest here can sense where you are in space with the cameras that are on the headset, and it's able to basically map your environment around you so that it knows where you are. And that's what it gives it the ability to offer 6 degrees of freedom. That really increases the amount of interactability that you can have in the headset and expands the amount of content that you can put in there as well. The Vive Pro, which is what we use primarily at REM 5, is going to be basically that same concept, but now a step up. So now you're connected to a computer, which has a much more powerful graphics card, and that's what that was able to create a more immersive experience. You're able to have better graphics, basically just a higher quality experience. But as we go from left to right on this image here, price goes up, the amount of capabilities goes up, and but the accessibility generally goes down. So it's harder to use those kind of devices. More, it takes more equipment. You know, we've got a space at REM 5 that's fully dedicated to these high-end VR headsets, but it's not necessarily something that's really easy to put in at home. All right. Just like the PC and mobile, this technology is going to change the way we work, learn, play, and socialize. So this is really why we're so excited about this technology at REM 5, because you're really able to do anything in virtual reality. You can see this image on the top here. This is a virtual meeting that people are having. So there can be people all over the world. You can be in the same virtual space. And so that's a really unique capability that virtual reality offers. You know, we've even had people, the image in the bottom right there, somebody created a virtual world and a bunch of images that that he had his fiance walk through right before he proposed to her. So really changing the way that we connect with other people, especially with something like distance learning. So a lot of interesting capabilities that we're adding with this technology. All right, so about REM 5, so we fall into 3 buckets as far as our business goes. Entertainment has been our primary business for the last 2 years. So we're trying to basically get this technology into people's hands for the first time. What's the easiest way to do that? Well, we trick them to come in to have pizza and beer and soda, maybe birthday parties, and get them to try VR for the first time and get them excited about this technology and everything that it can do. On the right there is what our corporate training is all about. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is really what we're focused on there. We've had over 2,000 community members participate in that over the past year, and just had a event where we had about 800 people throughout the United States in an experience on the same day. So really some interesting capabilities that we've got there. But that's what's going on the corporate side. What we're going to focus on here today is K through 12 and STEM education. So think about this as bringing the Magic School Bus to life. We've had about 3,000 students through REM 5 specifically primarily for field trips. And so that's really been the hub of what we're doing in that space so far, where we've done a lot of learning, worked with Meg and Guer on taking content that exists that's really great in virtual reality and using that as an educational tool. So this is maybe something that, you know, isn't necessarily accessible to schools to put 30 students through a virtual reality experience, but you can come to REM 5 and do that in a matter of 2 hours. We can get, you know, 30 kids through 3 or 4 experiences and really add to their educational learning for whatever objective teachers are trying to teach. So I'm going to have Meg and Guer help me here with a couple of real world stories. Meg, do you want to start out with seniors and sensory friendly events that we've done?
Yeah, so at REM 5, we've hosted groups of seniors as well as brought virtual reality to seniors in the local community. So VR offers this really powerful tool to be able to go, anywhere on the planet. So one program that we like to use at REM 5 is Google Earth, where you go into VR and you can go anywhere on the planet in a virtually created environment, as well as seeing 360 photos that have been taken of places all over the world. So people can go in, they can go visit places that they've been before, maybe somewhere on their bucket list. So this has been a really powerful one to use with seniors because you don't have to be a gamer or a tech expert to use virtual reality. We're there on the sidelines to kind of help guide the seniors through the experiences, and they're able to visit maybe the place that they grew up, or maybe where they went on their honeymoon. They could go anywhere. So we're not saying that VR is a replacement for the real thing, but we're able to maybe supplement their physical handicap with this really powerful technology where they can go literally anywhere, and it can improve mental health. I mean, loneliness, you can have like virtually created environments, and now is kind of a really interesting and unique time globally, just with the pandemic, where we're not exactly able to go maybe visit our elders. So we're able to maybe see them in VR, and kind of it can improve loneliness in seniors too. So yeah, it's a really powerful immersive tool. And then with our sensory friendly events that we have at REM 5 as well, we have our quarterly sensory friendly event where we kind of change the tone of REM 5 a little bit and create an environment for neurologically diverse children and adults to come into our space, in a place where we've like toned down the lights, toned down the music, and create an environment where they can safely experiment in VR and see what it's like in the virtual world. So we also have partnered with schools in the area too, where we have VR Club. And the Academy of Whole Learning is one example of one of the schools that we've partnered with. And weekly they would come in, about 10, 15 kids, and we're able to put each one of them into VR. And then they're able to do team building together and like play dodgeball, for example. And with the HTC Vive Pro, there's actually a microphone that's integrated in the headset, and these kids are able to interact with each other kind of in an environment that's different than the real world, where perhaps they may be overstimulated or overwhelmed, whereas in VR, they're kind of able to interact with each other in a different setting. And it's really interesting to see them interact and really enjoy the virtual world.
Yeah, and they really light up, you know, in VR in a way that maybe they don't normally in interactions with other people in the real world, even with their classmates. So that's been really phenomenal to you know, help experience and help those kids and those teachers find you know, immersive ways to use immersive technology to their advantage. Guer, do you want to go through a couple examples of K-12 education? This will kind of lay a foundation for what we're going to talk about here in a second with some of our distance learning offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a few different field trips of different classes and subjects come in, but one particularly good example was when we had a global studies group from SLP Middle School. I think it was their 8th grade class. And the entire 8th grade class, which was in this unit, came through over the course of 2 or 3 days, coming in waves of students. How many was it total, Charles? It was like 1,000 students, or was it like 800, 900?
No, it was like 450. Yep.
Was it? Okay, I thought it was more than that. It felt like more than that. They were coming in waves just every 2 hours for like 3 days straight. But the amazing thing is that we were able to put this many students through headsets. And we had them go in and Google Earth, what Meg was talking about, but instead of having them just travel or visit locations or old addresses, they were going to the continent of Africa, and they were visiting old temples, they were visiting the pyramids, the Sphinx, Abu Simbel, and at the same time, they were able to fly further down and visit the Kakuma refugee camp and actually get a sense of the scale of some of these spaces, the continent itself, some of these camps. And then moving away from those headsets, which was the HTC Vive Pros, they were able to get into the Oculus Go, which was the 360 image and video headset Travis was talking about. And the nice thing about that is we were able to put a lot of students into 360 documentaries about environmental conservation in Africa, into videos that were taken in the refugee camp, giving insight into like daily lives, students going to school there. And again, this wasn't like a replacement for textbook learning about all of the things they were studying, but it provided this really concrete, really powerful, immersive experience that gave a context for what they were studying, and that honestly got the students really excited. Like the first time they got in and actually started flying around and seeing all this stuff at scale, it was amazing to see how much they were blown away by all of these different things that they were experiencing, and we were able to put them through so much in such a limited time. It was a little exhausting, but it really panned out. And I really enjoyed seeing them get into it and really take advantage of the programming. And then on the flip side, We've done a lot, both in summer camps that we've run, as well as with classes that have come in on this sort of industrial design, art, and creation side. Virtual reality provides a really great tool for intuitive 3D design, because instead of having to futz around with a 2D screen and different CAD programs, you're literally just drawing and manipulating and viewing things in 3D. So in addition to like the professional side of it, where we've been able to have like architects and building planners come in and view designs for things that they were working on in 3D and take their clients through, we've also been able to bring in students from architecture classes to look at some of the things they've designed. We've been able to bring in students from art classes to create things in 3D and to try out different modeling tools. And these are the modeling tools they're going to be using 5-10 years from now when they're designers or artists who are having to create things using VR as part of that workflow. And it was really cool to see them like get into that and like figure out how those tools worked, especially the high schoolers. They were almost incredibly intelligent when it came to like jumping into this new technology and learning it. And it was really cool to see them learn about this and to use it to create things that like I wouldn't have thought of.
And you can see some of the artwork that was created in VR behind Meg and I. That's what our backgrounds are.
Yeah. Were those both drawn by Sherston?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
And
we've also had some professional artists come in and spend time in virtual reality creating stuff, and that's been really cool to see as well.
Yeah, and like Guer said, the cool thing about the art class that we had in, they were there for a few sessions, and you had 10 pods going at once, and there was 10 completely different concepts going on. Mm-hmm. So, you know, unlike you know, if you're working with clay, you're sort of limited by the medium, or, you know, same thing in a painting, a 2D picture. But with virtual reality, everybody's kind of taking this in a completely different direction. Sometimes people were supposed to walk through the experience. Sometimes they were standing in it, looking around. There's just all kinds of different things going on. So that's been really, really awesome to be a part of. And that's one of the things that we wanted to, with distance learning going on, and educators and parents trying to figure out, you know, what we're going to be doing here over the next few months. We've got all of these capabilities that we've been working on for 2 years that we're really excited about, that are really great for education, that really engage students and young people. So we wanted to be able to bring some of those capabilities to people. And so that's what we're going to highlight here over the rest of our time. 3 things that we're going to talk about: virtual youth innovation labs. So those actually aren't too dissimilar to what we're doing here today. Give a little bit of background on technology, and then highlight some specific concept in immersive technology. Typically, we're highlighting something in augmented reality, which I'll cover here in just a second. Youth Innovation Lab Plus, which is our program that we've developed, where you rent a headset and then get lesson plans. So parents are really getting engaged in that and liking giving their kids something to do that's both entertaining and educational in these times. So that's something that we're talking with schools with, expanding that as well. And then we're looking at some new platforms as well that we would love to have some partners help us out with. So Youth Innovation Lab is something we've been doing basically since REM 5. The physical location closed in March. So it's about 45 minutes of immersive technology and talking about how this technology is being used in the real world. So we've covered art, design, architecture, medicine, sports, and then space are the topics that we've covered so far in our weekly Youth Innovation Lab. So those have been really great to show some examples of how this technology is being used in the real world. And really the goal there is to get kids excited about some of these use cases and show them what's out there and what's possible. And so that they can know, you know, what sort of careers and what sort of, you know, if I get really interested in virtual reality, what in the world would I be doing with that? Well, we've had artists who are on the leading edge of creating art in VR, so we can explain what that looks like. You know, we've had design and architecture firms in So we can explain what that looks like, and even show the kind of things that you can do at home with devices that you might already have. So that's a really great way to kind of create a gateway into immersive technology. And you know, the great thing about this is really for anybody. We usually say ages about 6 and up, and a lot of times those younger kids are, you know, really excited about learning something that's just involved in, like, they're diving deeper into this technology that they're in every day, and they pick it up extremely quickly. So been really great to see how excited they get about some of the concepts that we've talked about. So let's see if I can. So to show you a little bit about what we have done with this, I'm going to show you a quick demo of a program called JigSpace. And this is one that we have used in a couple of different ways. But what's really great about it is there's a lot of different content available. Can you see this? Can you see my?
Yep, just came in.
Okay, so so here's JigSpace, the application right here. So this is an augmented reality application. Very simple to use, and there's even a JigSpace tool where you can create your own jigs, is I think what they call them. So I'll just open this up right here. I'll go back to the library. So this is the opening screen of JigSpace, and given everything that's going on, I thought I would show a coronavirus example here. And so this is just gonna open up an augmented reality setup here. So once this prepares instructions. So if you can see here on my table that I have, what I've done here is put a few pieces of tape on the table. And the reason that I've done that is what the AR system in your phone or your tablet is trying to do is it's trying to find a flat surface. And if you're looking at something like a granite countertop or a very shiny surface, I mean, like if you tried to do this on a mirror, it wouldn't work very well. Or maybe you've got a blanket or something like that that just isn't a flat surface. It's not going to understand basically where to build the floor, if you will. So what I'm trying to do here is tell the system, okay, these are some points that you can reliably count on as reference points to build off of. So if you see somebody doing like arena scale virtual reality, you might see these kind of pieces of tape all over the place as well. So this is going to be something that's going to become more and more common as virtual reality becomes more common as well. So that's the reason that I've done this, is I just want to make sure that the system doesn't get confused by the surface that I have on this table right here. And so this will create a nice surface for me to put this jig in. So I'm going to just tap there to place my coronavirus. And with my fingers, I can expand this. I can make it a little bit smaller. I can twist this around, and then you can see on the bottom here, this has actually got a little bit of information about SARS-CoV-2 as well. And then on the bottom right, we can go through, it goes through more information steps and then shows the difference between SARS-CoV, SARS-CoV-2, and then MERS as well. So you can see these are slightly different viruses, even though they may look sort of similar, but you can see some subtle differences there. What this is showing is how the virus spread from animals to humans, and then you can go inside of the virus here as well. So when we're doing Virtual Youth Innovation Lab, really the goal here is to give kids a unique perspective, and we're able to use technology like this to do that. So really great tool. You know, if your only mediums to show what this virus is was just a 2D screen or discussion topics, it would be a lot more difficult to explain what's going on here. And then this talks about how it gets into your cells, into your body, and what it does when it's there, replicating. How the virus is spread. and how it can go from a surface to somebody else, and then how basically it's just walking you through how to keep everybody safe from coronavirus. So this is a fairly simple augmented reality tool, but there's a lot of information here. You see this application. We can learn about heart stents. We can learn about tectonic plates, how microphones work. There's all kinds of things that go on here. So if you start digging into augmented reality and the capabilities that are available and the educational opportunities that are available, it's kind of endless. And especially with something like space here, which I'll have Meg help talk about in a little bit. There's just so much content that NASA has put out, in particular, and they're really trying to use some of this technology to help explain things to students in a new and unique way. So what we do with the Virtual Youth Innovation Lab is really give that baseline and what technology is all about, what immersive technology is all about, and then also let me go back to that. Give an idea of how you can use some of these pieces of technology for specific learning objectives that you might have. All right. Oh, there you go. Have you got the presentation back there? Okay.
It just popped up.
Yeah, and Meg, if you want to jump in here and just talk a little bit about how AR is disrupting the world. I know VR might get a little bit more attention, but augmented reality is actually more common, and there's hundreds of millions of devices out there that are using augmented reality. So there's just a few examples here.
Yeah. So Snapchat they have face filters that are used as an interesting version of augmented reality. Furniture industry, IKEA, along with Amazon, is using AR for being able to see things in your house before you purchase them. So like IKEA, you could check out how your couch would look in your space before you even ordered it online. I recently purchased a robot vacuum off of Amazon, and I was able to view it in my living room before I purchased it. Not sure how incredibly necessary it is, but it was definitely cool. Obsess is another example of AR, and so it's like a fashion clothing kind of opportunity for smaller businesses to so you can see clothing before you would purchase it, as well as kind of augmented reality versions of event spaces too. So that one is kind of one that has been popping up recently with COVID-19. So you'd be able to check out clothing before you would purchase it in your life.
Yeah, so a lot of growing use cases for this technology all over the world. All right, second thing that we wanted to go through was Youth Innovation Lab Plus. And this is something that we've spent a lot of time on over the last month or two, and really trying to use the technology that we have available at REM 5 and sort of basically take those assets from home and allow parents to use them, or from REM 5 and then allow parents to use them at home and have some educational outcomes. So we're renting the hardware. We've had 25 lessons completed. They're intended to be about an hour a piece, and they're studying immersive topics from space to medicine to history, same kind of things that you would be doing in school. But there's no distractions when you're in virtual reality. I know that that's a challenge with distance learning right now, and we try to give a lot of tools outside of VR as well, using things like augmented reality. So JigSpace is an example of that, that we would, this space I'll keep coming back to, and we'll talk about more here, but there's so much content out there in the AR space that can really add to the things that we're teaching with Youth Innovation Lab Plus. This is intended to be for most students, we say about eight plus, and that can be an individual or it can be a whole class if anybody's interested in talking to us about that as well. So wanted to highlight here what one of these lessons looks like. So we do a lot of pre-work. So typically the piece of content that we're going through usually helps if there's a little bit of background to it. And that's what the pre-work is all about. So Apollo 11, we probably all know what Apollo 11 is all about and the significance of that mission. But if you're, 8 or 9 years old, you maybe haven't heard, don't have that background. So just getting a little bit of background in what Apollo 11 is, who the first person to set foot on the moon is, sort of like lays the groundwork for what the VR experience is going to be. And then the VR experience itself, and I'll let Meg kind of talk about this because she spent the most time leading our space content.
Yeah, so the Apollo 11 piece of content is a cinematic experience where you have this first-person perspective and you're in a full VR headset, so you're totally immersed. And you get to see the basically entirety of the Apollo 11 mission as if you were an astronaut in space yourself. So you start out in the rocket, you go up into space, and you get to see, like in the bottom right photo, you're right next to the other astronaut. You get to see inside how truly small and cramped it feels. You kind of have this physical body feeling of maybe a little claustrophobia because it is truly so small. And you go to the moon, you're able to walk around the moon, see everything to scale, which is really powerful and impactful because it's something that only immersive tech can do. As opposed to when I was in school studying Apollo 11, it would be, maybe I would be watching a video of it on a television or looking at a photo in a textbook. Whereas when you're using VR as an immersive education tool, you're able to see everything to scale as it is. So you're standing on the moon and you can like look and see planet Earth from a perspective that's completely unparalleled. So it's just a really powerful tool, and to see the kids go in and be completely immersed and have that unmatched perspective is really, really neat.
Yeah, and sometimes like watching their faces kind of tells you everything you need to know about what they're getting out of it. That's one of the comments that we've heard from parents who've done Youth Innovation Lab Plus is like, wow, my kids are like having fun doing these things. So it's like the gamification of education is the way that we like to talk about it, because you're making educational content really fun and interactive. So when you go through that experience, obviously there's things that you're learning in that, and then to hammer those things home, there's a number of questions that we'll ask at the end, the post-VR questions. So here's just a few examples that the piece of Apollo 11 content goes through. Who's the first country to put man in space? Who are the 3 astronauts aboard Apollo 11? So things that you're maybe thinking about during the experience, but these questions, and we always ask students to read through these questions first, so that when those answers pop up, it really sinks in what we're trying to get from a learning outcome. Move my slides around here so I can see everything. And then after that, I think I mentioned before, there's a lot of additional content that we like to put at the end of these lessons. So if there's great augmented reality content that goes along with, we will include that. Websites with fun facts and videos. A lot of times there's a lot of fun ways to learn about different experiences, whether you're learning about the human body and blood cells, to physics. We did a piece on genetics last week, and getting a baseline of what genetics is like in the real world, and how people get eye color and things like that. So there's always some additional content that goes along with that, and we try to keep that in that immersive space as well. And then, these can really be a flexible structure. What we've done with our rental program is try to build these out to be a diverse number of pieces of content, so that if you're going to do 1 week or 5 weeks of this program, we're spacing out, our space content and trying to do something related to history every week or medicine every week, so that there's some variety in what we're doing all the time. But there's a lot of flexibility if classes are interested in using this as well, to incorporate with things like Google Classroom. That's something that we've looked at doing, so that this question and answer portion of it can be a little bit more regimented, depending on what tools you're using in your school. So happy to answer any questions about that as well. And then here's a couple things that parents have said about Youth Innovation Lab Plus. The fact that the two of the parents commented about how much they liked doing some of these experiences was really cool. That was within the first couple of days that they had the headset. So I think they were taking it from the kids a little bit every once in a while. And then this last one here, Apollo 11 and Anne Frank, those are two of the really powerful and kind of highlight experiences that we have. Virtual reality allows you to put yourself into experiences that you're maybe never actually going to have. So walking through the Anne Frank house, being on the Apollo 11 mission, those are really things that you can't necessarily do in real life. So we're able to bring that to people. So that's been really great. There's a couple of pictures of people doing virtual reality here. And I think the cool thing with kids, especially younger kids, is that they just get so into it and so into the learning that's going on. So that's really exciting. And then, the other thing that we're trying to do as we adjust to this new world that we have here is add to our capabilities. So, we're beta testing new formats and content. So that's virtual classrooms, VR programming with things like WebXR, and AR programming with Merge Cube. I think I have one of those here. If you haven't seen the Merge Cube, these are really cool devices, and is basically an augmented reality device. So if you have a Merge Cube application, which some are free, so it's really inexpensive way to get into augmented reality, you can actually build content that will live on the surface, depending on which surface you're looking at. So lots of different options there, and if anybody's interested in exploring some of those and exploring how they can use immersive technology, we're happy to have that conversation. Just email us, contact@rem5vr.com, and happy to push that discussion forward. All right, any questions out there, Brian? I'll let you, I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe let you lead that part.
I just had a question from Scott. Can you guys hear me still?
Yep. I can hear you.
Cool. Scott was wondering if you guys have ever worked with Qubity. He's hoping to figure out how that might fit into an architecture class, or otherwise maybe talk about some of the programs we've used with our architects that have come into the space.
Yeah, so Qubity is not one that I have used, but I know that this one is using SketchUp files. SketchUp files are what we use in some of the programs that we're using in virtual reality. I'd be happy to dive into that specifically because there are a few other options that are becoming available. I'm blanking on the name right now. Brian, I know you were in on the little topic, but the Sketchfab is opening up augmented reality. So that's something where you can build an environment on a computer and then look at it in VR or AR. So there's different opportunities to kind of use cross platforms. So I'm not familiar with this one specifically, but I know that using SketchUp files with VR and AR, and then Some of those are you're able to use with the Google Cardboard as well. So you can basically like export a file and walk through a building model with the Google Cardboard. So a little bit more accessible than having a full VR headset. But I'd be happy to look at this as well. I know SKP files are what we've typically used for a lot of our architecture and engineering work. So, so I don't know if that's a great answer there, but Sketchpad work. Typically, I'm just looking at Scott's question. Sketchfab might work with a SketchUp file. Typically Revit, Revit works with kind of more expensive pieces of software. So typically you have to export SketchUp files to be able to use them in some of these programs. Revit has its own plugins. Enscape is one that we've used at Rem 5, but the quality isn't as good as using SketchUp files with some of the more purpose-built programs for virtual reality, for you know, kind of the 360 video as well. So so I have not tried to take Revit files or SketchUp files into Sketchfab yet, and they've actually just added some of these augmented reality capabilities to Sketchfab within the last like 3 or 4 days. So so I haven't spent a ton of time doing that yet. But would be happy to.
From what I've been looking at, I think direct import is going to be possible from Revit to Sketchfab, like with plugins. But just like my off-the-cuff recommendation would be to go with a file and then separately import it, because anytime you're trying to get two programs to talk directly, especially with VR or AR, there's a really good chance they're not going to be speaking each other's language, and it's a lot easier to like use a well-recognized file format, and then there's always going to be compatibility. So I guess the short answer is yes, it would work. It just depends on the approach you want.
Yeah, and it really depends on what you what your output is trying to be. You know, are you trying to have it be an AR output that you're looking at an iPad and, you know, showing somebody a model? Do you want to have it be something like a cardboard where very cheap and accessible, but, you know, you're more immersed in it? You know, it goes back to the sort of that VR versus augmented reality output. So yeah. Scott said AR would be the output they would look at. Yeah, so I'm happy to chat about that with you more offline. And Guerre's helped me a lot on a lot of this architecture and engineering work that we've done. So so we can see if we have an easy answer for you there. Brian, what is next?
Yeah, we've got a great question from Maria, actually. She says she's here looking for a new way to do career exploration with high school students, but she's trying to think outside the box this year. I think that actually tees up really well to something that we could do as far as a similar, you know, online format like this with a bit of a presentation, just because we try to utilize, you know, real world career examples in so much of what we do. So.
Yeah, and there are sort of immersive examples of using this technology to get yourself basically into some of these career fields. So one that I've explored a little bit that is really fascinating to me is there's a doctor who has recorded themselves doing medical procedures, so sort of simple medical procedures like intubating a patient in virtual reality.
But the experience that Travis is referring to was basically a collection of 360 videos that, again, medical professionals took of a lot of different operations, and all of it is right there in the room. I mean, they can place the camera pretty discreetly, so they can cover a lot of different kinds of things, and it allows you to be there in the space watching as these operations happening, seeing how everyone is assisting each other and kind of how the operation goes. And it's really cool in the sense that it puts you right there and gives you a sense of like what it actually feels like to be in the room kind of participating in a lot of these operations in a way that reading about them or wondering about them or asking to yourself in your head, could could I actually handle it? Like, I learned that I couldn't handle that because I'm really squeamish and I had to stop watching. And like, if I was 17 years old and considering a medical career, that would have been a really good thing to see.
Yeah, and
Did I
was
come
gonna
back
say,
online?
yeah, you're back. I was going to say, we've also done some panels with some local VR developers. So we have a network of folk that are literally building, you know, whether it's games or other types of experiences for virtual reality every single day as a day job. So those are always some really knowledgeable people that we like to reach out to as well to kind of build on those real world conversations.
Yeah, so I think the way to think about that from a career standpoint is VR and AR is a really great tool to show what it's like to be inside of someone else's job. So that's the question there is going to be, does that content exist? Like basically, as somebody recorded themselves, doing a medical procedure, or driving a construction truck, or there's all kinds of different concepts out there. And then also talking about how VR and AR basically expands the careers that are available. And so that's something that we think about a lot too, is like, there's going to be all kinds of new jobs available, both creating content and using content that just simply weren't available, 5 or 10 years ago. So that's kind of the two angles to take the career piece. So depending on what way you want to go, be happy to chat with you more about that, because they're both really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Maria.
That's awesome.
Just feel free to reach out. And this goes for everyone on the call too. Any more particular questions that are for your school or your class or anything else, we'd love to just chat one-on-one after this. So.
Yeah, and I mentioned before, but contact@rem5vr.com is really the best way to reach out to us. And some of those specific questions, sometimes we'll have an answer right away. Sometimes we, do a little bit of digging and can come up with an answer quickly. But we've been spending a lot of time. We've spent 2+ years in this space diving into all the content that's available. So if it's out there, we'll find it. All right. Well, anything else or any questions about any of the things we went over today? Well, thanks everybody for joining us. So happy that, we could tell a little bit more about what we're doing in the education space. We're trying to build this out as much as possible with the tools that we have available. What's been really awesome is that kids, parents, teachers, administrators are really excited about using this technology. And now with distance learning, it kind of creates new and sometimes challenging opportunities. But if you're interested in talking about those more, what we've done, how we can adapt that to help out your classroom or your use case, we'd be happy to chat about that more, because we're all kind of learning and developing this together. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a great rest of the night.